We are continuing our journey around the vineyards of Occitanie, and now we've arrived in the Corbière. So if you cross over the Canal du Midi from the Minervois into the Corbière, it's like changing into a different country. The landscape changes completely. In front of you, you see a mountain called the Alaric, and beyond that, you just have undulations and hills all the way down to the Pyrenees in the background. This is a landscape of mountains, hillsides, valleys, depressions, gorges, undulating completely. It's not flat at all. And in these depressions and in these valleys, you will find a combination of vineyards, you will find olive trees, you will find garrigue, which grows everywhere around here, plus also a multitude of other fruit trees and occasionally some crops. It's not a monoculture at all, it's incredibly varied. And with this geological cacophony, you have everything from clay, limestone, schist, gallivolet, you have some red soils, all growing in the same landscape, plus all this very, very different topography. It's very difficult to say what does the real Corbière taste like, because there are so many different versions of Corbière. This is the largest appellation in the Languedoc. It's around about 10,000 hectares. Now, if we've gone back to more than 20 years ago, this area would have been more than 18,000 hectares. It's taken quite a big hit with the vine pool scheme over the last 20 years, but what we are left with some really old vines. It's the Carignan that is the king here. Carignan is the main grape variety for the red wine, followed then by Grenache, and then Syrah, and then occasionally some Mourvèdre and Cinsault. And red wine forms the majority of the wine production here. The climate here is distinctly Mediterranean, yet you do have some more continental influences the further south you go. And what is also incredibly noticeable here in the Corbière is the wind, notably the Tramontane, which seems to blow for half the year. This is a wind that comes from the northwest and ends up being funneled between the Cévennes, the Black Mountains in the north, and the Pyrenees in the south. So by the time it reaches the Corbière, it's blowing pretty much at its maximum, so you could be getting winds at over 100 kilometers an hour. This is quite tough terrain. This is rugged. It's like the Wild West of the Languedoc, but it gives this personality to the wines. It gives this kind of sauvage, almost wild character to the wines, which is very different from its neighboring appellations, even when you're made with similar grape varieties. If you're used to drinking Corbière 20 or 30 years ago, you should come back and revisit it now. It's an appellation that has changed. I can't think of any other appellation in the Languedoc which has gone through such a colossal change as the Corbière. It is really worth taking another look if you need to. Here we have a Corbière Blanc, you notice, so this is not the normal style you would expect to see from Corbière. It's quite rarer to see a white Corbière. Domaine du Grand Arc is located in the southernmost part of the Corbière, around a village called Cucugnan, which is pretty much on the border with the Roussillon. It's really the last bastion of vineyards in the Languedoc before you arrive in the Roussillon. And here we are at altitude. You've got vineyards between 250 and 600 meters altitude. It's a wine that's a blend of Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, and some Vermentino. The first aroma I get from this is like sort of a waxy lemon peel, almost like a beeswax character, with a lovely sort of lime, linden tree scent, some floral characteristics, a little bit of honeysuckle, and again some of that lovely citrus character. There's no oak at all in this wine, it's all about the fruit. The wine on the palate is surprisingly dense. When you smell the wine, it smells very much like that floral citrus character. On the palate, it really packs a punch. You know, this is quite dense, it's quite intense. There's richness. There's a lovely sort of creamy complexity that's underlying this wine, and a beautiful sort of chalky, almost mineral scent. And the wine just keeps going. This is not a wine that just is there and disappears straight away. This is a wine that's got considerable length and certainly a beautiful, beautiful poise and balance. A really lovely example of a white Corbière. Now within the Corbière, there is also a cru appellation. A bit like we saw with the Minervois, where you had La Livinière within the Minervois appellation. Likewise in the Corbière, you have a cru appellation based around the village of Boutenac, which is in the northern part of the appellation, and it gives its name to the appellation called Appellation Corbière Boutenac. Now this is a small appellation, less than 200 hectares, that is between Lézignan and Narbonne in the northern part. It's sheltered by the Alaric from the west, and also by the Massif de Fontfroide in the east. So it sits in a slight depression, which means that it's really quite a warm, almost hot area. The soil is a sort of iron-rich, reddish clay overlaid by galets roulés, which are the big stones like you see in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which you find here in Corbière-Boutenac. Carignan, again, is the king of the varieties. And when we say Carignan, we mean old Carignan. There's Carignan in Boutenac, which is over 100 years old. Some of it is planted ungrafted, planted pre-phylloxera, before the bug arrived. So it gives this very intense character, lots of blackberry, black cherry, licorice, those sort of violets, but always retaining the trademark acidity that this variety can provide. And I think what Corbière-Boutenac has shown is that when people really come together and look what a distinctive terroir and what it's capable of, then it genuinely does deserve a separate appellation, which is what Corbière-Boutenac is. The wine we're going to try from Corbière-Boutenac is Domaine de Villemajou, which is located in the little hamlet of Villemajou, which is literally no more than 2 kilometers from Boutenac itself. This is an estate that is owned by Gérard Bertrand. In fact, it's the original family estate. The soil here is very much of that sort of reddish soil overlaid by the galets roulés, the big pudding stones. This is an estate that's now working organically. I think with this vintage 2016, it was probably still under Lutte Raisonnée, but now they've converted to organic. And this is a wine that is based on Carignan. So Carignan is the main grape variety in this wine. And as I mentioned earlier, Boutenac has some very old Carignan, and there's some very old Carignan in this wine. Carignan that's between 80 and 100 years old. Complementing the Carignan, we have Grenache, Syrah, and a little bit of Mourvèdre as well. Straight away on the nose, this is very intense, it's very aromatic. It's got everything from that sort of morello cherry, violet, licorice, tobacco, and this sort of lovely herbal, thyme, rosemary characteristic going on. There's also a touch of vanilla coming from some oak, but this is very much in the background and not at all overpowering the other considerable aromas in this wine. On the palate, this is a wine that starts almost piano and then crescendos and grows to a fortissimo. And here we've got this complex array of red and black fruit characters with some spiciness, some licorice, this lovely background of the oak. And this very distinct herbal overtone, which you often find in Corbière and Boutenac in particular. This is a wine that has real intensity and real length. A wine that you can drink now, but has great potential for aging. To me, it epitomizes everything that Corbière, and specifically Boutenac, is about. This old vine Carignan, which delivers power, elegance, finesse, and this beautiful wild herbal character.